You know, it's stories like this that really made me name this channel Absurd World Review.
Major Medicaid fraud trial in Hennepin County is now canceled after the defendant disappeared. Authorities are searching for Abdi Rashid Saeed, charged for his role in an $11 million scheme. And as Lou Ragoose is here to explain, all it took was $150,000 to avoid the consequences. Lou?
Julie, it was a bail amount lower than prosecutors wanted, and it came with no guardrails. Abdi Rashid Saeed had his passport and technically no travel restrictions.
Part of our culture to help people.
Abdi Rashid Saeed is the original personal care assistant company fraudster who stole taxpayer money while claiming to operate out of this mailbox at an office on Central Avenue in Northeast Minneapolis. After he was convicted in 2021 and ordered to have nothing to do with companies that receive Medicaid money, other PCA companies took his place at the Central Avenue office, and Saeed started receiving checks from them.
Were those checks for employment for you, Mr. Saeed?
No,
What were they for?
loans.
At a probation violation hearing, Saeed claimed the checks were loans, including to pay back his restitution in the first fraud case. Investigators didn't buy it, and they charged Saeed, along with the owners of the other PCA companies, of racketeering, a conspiracy to steal $11 million of taxpayer money, uncovering text messages between them saying things like, "I'm going to overbill the hours."
So this dude already got busted in 2021 and was basically given a slap on the wrist, allowed to remain in this country, and allowed ultimately to steal $11 million more of taxpayer money. And then on top of that, he just gets handed, I don't know, a get out of the country free card essentially by this judge.
No, Your Honor, our culture is we trust one another.
Prosecutors also charged Saeed with perjury, and his trial Monday was set to be the crowning moment in the state's long investigation. But according to multiple sources, he has instead successfully fled the country. How? He had no travel restrictions. At a bail hearing after he was charged, prosecutors wanted to set bail at $1 million, but Judge Juan Hoyos gave Saeed two options: a $50,000 bond where he gives up his passport, or a $150,000 bond with no conditions. Saeed opted for the higher amount, and he kept his passport.
Now, there's all sorts of people speculating that this is a woke judge and that's why he was given this essentially sweetheart deal that allowed him to go ahead and escape the country and potentially escape prosecution. But to me, it honestly implies that this judge was probably a part of the massive democratically backed fraud schemes that have been happening in Minnesota. He probably, if he didn't accept money directly, he probably knows that part of that money is going to the Democratic Party, the team. So it seems to me like he probably offered him this deal, likely assuming that he would take the $150,000, retain his passport, and get on out of this country in order to avoid a trial that may have very potentially exposed Democratic politicians in the state of Minnesota and perhaps even federal Congress. Who knows?
Attorney General Keith Ellison in a statement saying in part, "This is a deeply frustrating setback. However, I remain committed to doing everything I can to hold Saeed and the other Medicaid fraudsters accountable."
Also in the statement, Ellison said that they're working with federal law enforcement to try to locate Saeed and bring him to justice. My sources tell me that they don't know what country Saeed ended up in. One last thing, Julie, I just in the last hour discovered a document that the Attorney General's office filed before that bail was set, where they warned that Saeed's family lives in Kenya, his wife and his kids, and they worried that he would try to run.
But you? Well, if you happen to live in a state that hasn't legalized cannabis, you're certainly still going to suffer for it. Let's see, if you're late on your taxes, you're certainly going to have to pay for it. What else? You know, how many other petty crimes could you possibly commit that will ultimately result in greater punishment for you than this foreigner that robbed Americans ever will suffer? You know, and before you be like, oh, you know, he lost 150 grand. Well, 150 grand out of $11 million really isn't too big of a bill to avoid imprisonment, if you ask me.